It's time once again for another thrilling episode of Mark Out Radio. For the next hour, sit back, pull the stick out of your ass, and enjoy. Be warned though, smarks and internet know-it-alls will be offended, annoyed, and generally pissed off at what's about to happen to your ear holes. You've been warned. Now, Mark Out Radio.
God, holy shit. I mean, if you've been here the whole time, you've heard two false starts, and then what I'm sure everyone thought was another one. Jesus Christ. Might be time for a new mixer. God damn it. What the fuck? Oh, that's ridiculous. All right. If you're listening to the podcast, you won't know what I'm even talking about. So welcome to today's clusterfuck, and on YouTube as well. All right, welcome to Mark Out Radio, episode number 90 for June the 2nd, 1997, out of the Hara Arena in Dayton, Ohio. Hosted, of course, by Tony Schiavone, Larry Zabisco, and Bobby the Brain Heenan. Now, this week marks the 6th anniversary of the passing of Roddy Piper. I have nothing else to say about it. If you've listened to me at all over the years, you know what a mark I was and am for Roddy Piper. Moving on. This is Nitro's 51st win in a row with a 3.3 in the ratings to Raw's 2.5. There are 4,951 in attendance, making a $70,556 gate. Holy crap, slow down, boy. Anyways, that is the end of the stats we have for this week. I've got no stats for merch sales. I've got no stats for how many people are actually paying to be there. It is what it is. The Great American Bash is still 2 weeks away, and while we're building well towards it, some of the segments are for heat that never pays off, and other ones haven't happened yet. There, for example, has been zero attempt to build for the Ultimo Dragon Psychosis match. The Heat versus the Steiners hasn't started building yet. Although, to be fair here, they've been putting heat on both teams, just not towards each other. Conan and Hugh Morrus is building well. Glacier Wrath is, of course, getting a good amount of attention, as is the retirement match for Medusa as she faces off against Hokuto. The Benoit Ming match is getting built slowly. Listen, I wouldn't say it's being built well, since the build makes no sense, and why someone would want to face Sullivan for the 16th month in a row is baffling at best, but what the fuck ever, it's the 90s and we're watching wrestling, right? So let's just calm our shit down. The Green McMichael heat is coming along very well. In fact, so far, they haven't oversold this match, but it is the 90s and it is WCW, so give them a little time. The Outsiders Flair and Piper match is also getting a good amount of attention, and they've kept the fans interested in the Savage GDP rematch very well. Amazing what can be accomplished when the head booker isn't focused on their own storyline. It's fascinating stuff. It will not be the first time I bring that up this week. Anyways, the show kicks off with Hall and Six in the ring, cutting a promo, putting themselves over after a few minutes of fairly mediocre promo, let's be honest here. JJ Dillon comes out and books an impromptu main event between Hall and Flair. We cut to an NWO rat as we dump into the intro vignette. Listen, I'm not at all sorry when I draw attention to women scantily clad at wrestling events. There's a reason that you're dressed like that, and I don't care if you're there with your husband or your boyfriend, or in fact, if you're there with your fucking kids. I've been around the industry long enough to know what that means. And believe me, I'm not the only one. Anyways, Glacier defeats Alex Wright in your first match of the night. I give it 3 out of 5. The German twink is still leaning heavy into his heel turn. Glacier returns to the ring. His blonde hair has recently been touched up, and he's eating far more offense than usual. So Tony points out that Wright's only getting ahead in the score because Glacier is still hurt. Now, I gotta ask, why would you come back if you're still injured? The point of taking time off is to heal up, right? Kayfabe-wise at least, right? Glacier sneaks in the karate kick to get the pinfall. I got another honest question here. I know I'm being really sarcastic right out of the gate here, but they spent so much time on Glacier's gimmick, building up to him arriving, him being 6 months late, his ridiculously long fucking entrance, the goddamn poses that put Hogan's to shame. And his finisher is literally called the karate kick. I guess because Hogan's is called the leg drop, it makes sense. But why couldn't they call it something interesting like the Avalanche or Whiteout or, I don't know, something snow related? What the fuck? Vandenberg comes out with the helmet, and as though on cue, Morrus and Wrath come out next, and while Glacier is selling a punch to Wrath's tummy tum, the beatdown commences. Alex Wright demands to get in on the action, eventually gets a decent amount of heat from the crowd. As he holds Glacier, though, Morrus kicks him in the head. Eventually, Glacier does get the best of this exchange and chases Vandenberg to the back as we go to break. Back from break, Buff Bagwell defeats Joe Gomez. 2.5 out of 5 for that one. Did I give a score to the first one? I must have. Yeah, I had 3 out of 5. Anyways. Buff Bagwell, Joe Gomez, 2.5 out of 5. Gomez just keeps getting fatter. Bagwell and Norton cut a very calm and low-key picture-in-picture promo as Gomez does the face thing, going around the ring, giving high fives to the kids. This match was fairly formulaic as a heel versus face match. Now, it would have been better if the face was actually over, or at least as over as the heel was, but there's nothing wrong with old-school wrestling like this, and it happens to work. Bagwell's finisher is a thing of beauty, unlike, of course, the fucking Glacier one. Essentially, it's a top rope neck breaker to a standing opponent called the Blockbuster. So that's a nice looking finisher with a name that results in a pinfall. Checks all the boxes. After this, Prince Iaukea defeats Hugh Morrus 2.5 out of 5. Morrus gets nailed by a kendo stick as Conan does the only Cholo thing about his gimmick, a drive by... What? Hold on a second. The producer's shaking his head at me. I can hear the nut rambling around there. What's the problem? I'm not allowed to say that. I really don't think that people that call themselves Cholos would have a problem with that joke. What about other people? Wait, hold on. So I can't tell a joke about Cholos at a drive-by because somebody other than a Cholo would find that offensive? Who wrote that rule? Society? Fuck society. Society's full of whiny little bitches. I'm not following their rules. All right. Public service announcement time. If you identify as a Cholo and are offended that a Cuban did a drive-by with a kendo stick from behind while a white, allegedly sexist big dude was the recipient of it, please email me at mlrmarkout@gmail.com and let me know. I promise I won't tell you to get a sense of humor or to go fuck yourself. Honest. The drive-by has the opposite effect, which was probably the desired kayfabe effect Conan was going for, and Morrus was shot out of a cannon, laid a beating to Iaukea with his new yellow vinyl tights on. Jesus, 2 segments in the same match. All right. It's wrestling lesson time with Dark Fox, kids, and granted, my experience is lacking. I have some, just not very much. Gather round. Now, when taking a forearm bash to the upper back, it's important to stay loose until the hit and then tense up to sell the pain. If you tense up prior to the shot, yes, it does protect you a little bit, but it also hurts a lot more, and it often results in knots in the shoulders and traps. Now, if you've got a stiff monkey like Hugh Morrus bashing the ever-loving shit out of your shoulders and upper back, it's really just better to make sure you're selling the ever-loving shit out of it yourself, because it's the only way that this big dummy is ever going to stop actually hitting you. Now, I may have to check the record books, but I'm fairly sure that no one has ever died from a forearm shot, but more than a few guys have been stiffed so hard that they get tension migraines and puke as a result of this. So, yeah, I mean, don't be a jackass. Stay loose until you get hit and then sell the shit out of the result. All right? How about that? I really don't think that that's relevant. Anyways, Morrus sloppily botches a clothesline, driving his knee into Iaukea gut. He sells it because he wasn't sure what the fuck was going on. Morrus sets him up for this again, and he strings together his go-home with a roll-up cradle for the win. Listen, there are wrestlers that, like, for example, we'll see him later on the match, like Hall, who will visibly make fun of his opponent that they fucked up the move and go like, try number 2, right? They'll do that kind of shit. Now, to his credit, at least Morrus didn't draw attention to it. He did bounce him off of the other ropes for the second time, but I mean, he couldn't have stood still for 1,000 years before Iaukea rolled him up. Just sloppy, just awful. And I mean, granted, Hugh Morrus is a stiffy Magoo, alleged abuser, whatever the fuck, but all 2.5 points go to him for this match for making Prince Iaukea look like he can actually wrestle his way out of a wet paper bag. So there is that. Gene has a rant promo here with JJ Dillon. They put over the main event and then discuss the tag team division. And the committee has decided that the number one contenders for the tag team belts are the Steiners and will face the winners of the Outsider Flair and Piper match at the Bash. Now, fans both in and out of kayfabe would probably agree with this assessment since they did defeat the Outsiders for the titles at one point. But Harlem Heat shouldn't be overlooked, obviously, and right on cue, here they are to make their case. JJ Dillon leaves it with if the Steiners win tonight, they're the number one contenders. Now, Sherry threw in that actions create reactions, which is very physics of her, so that's nice. Actions do have reactions. I'm sure my driveway will have a reaction. Anyways, so the Larry quips that her face is her chaperone. Jesus fuck, that was really harsh. Funny, but harsh. But essentially setting up here that if the Steiners and the Heat lose, which, spoiler alert, they're gonna have to face each other, which again, setting up the Bash. Holy shit. Right? Anyways. After this, there's a gritty DDP vignette about losing his first 79 matches and his work ethic. It's all a little bit self-serving, but it's done in that face, I'm proud of how far I've come way, so it goes over. After this, Masahiro, Chono, and the great Muta defeat the Steiner brothers, Rick and Scott Steiner. I gave that one 3.5 out of 5. Now, Chono and Muta come out to the NWO music, not wearing any NWO merch, though Chono is waving a shirt around again. I mean, at least they're wearing black and white in their ring attire, and Muta has his face painted up black and white, so there is that, right?
Now you start using your head. That's that lump that's 3 feet above your ass.
Are you crying?
Are you crying? Are you crying?
There's no crying.
There's no crying in baseball.
Thank you. About halfway through the match, Tony claims that they have been given a note that if the Steiners win, they'll face the winners of the Outsiders Flair Piper match at the Bash. So, like, the note, just out of curiosity, was it delivered by the Pony Express? Why is Tony repeating JJ's promo from 5 minutes ago and acting like he's breaking news? Is he not watching the same show you are? Yes! And why didn't Larry shit on him because of this? Jesus.
We coming for you, nigga.
Oh, okay, thank you very much. Of course, the Heat come out and lay out Rick Steiner, roll him back into the ring where he gets counted out with a leg lock from Muta. His shoulders were down, so I guess this is why the 3 count happened, I guess. Anyways, post-match is a rant promo. Gene, JJ Dillon, and the Harlem Heat. Maybe the Steiners aren't the number one contenders, but the Heat better be ready for their own match. Don't get me wrong, I don't mind comically set up wrestling vignettes and promos. Sometimes they can be really, really shitty. Just god awful, drag this out. I understand that wrestling companies have a very low opinion of their fan base, but holy shit, what the fuck? Anyways, after break, Tony recaps the Steiner match and then the main event, just in case you weren't watching this and you were watching Raw in hour 1. There's a rant promo, Gene and Flair. Flair earns yet another FCC fine for the WCW by cutting a promo that didn't make a whole lot of sense, but at least he got to say crap and shit. But I mean, it went over big with a live crowd. Unfortunately, the production piped in some crowd noise during the promo and forgot to cut it off until Wallstreet's music had already started. So that's awesome. Dean Malenko then defeats Michael Wallstreet in a WCW United States heavyweight title match. Give that 3 out of 5. Wallstreet is still wearing his anti-WCW shirt since his NWO contract was deemed null and void. Now, before we get into this match, I mean, we need to pause here a second and discuss the recent release of Bray Wyatt. I know that this isn't a 90s release. This is like, this week release or yesterday. But here's the thing. It's Mike Rotunda's kid, and I just kind of want to talk about it for just a second here. Now, on July 31st, 2021, WWE came to terms with Rotunda's release, but then used a picture of him from when he was close to 350 pounds instead of the leaner 285 that he's ended up wrapping out his WCW career at. Now, obviously, Bray was crazy over, and his Fiend gimmick and the Firefly Funhouse gimmicks were all big enough to rope Alexa Bliss into it. The problem here is that Bray, his gimmick, and indeed most of his segments were his ideas. Creative had nothing for Husky Harris after the Nexus breakup. They had nothing for him for close to a decade. So to say that Bray wasn't over or that Bray wasn't drawing, just revisionist history. The feuds Creative put him in definitely did not always go over, and often the matches themselves were just awful, or the result was awful for his character's build. I don't know the guy. I kind of wish I did, though all the reports are that the whole fucking family are awesome people. But if I had to guess, his messy divorce, followed closely by the loss of Luke Harper, and then Braun's release, and Creative having nothing for Bray to do except keep putting him in fucking feuds with Randy Orton over and over and over and over again, probably became too much. Now, there are bright spots, of course, like marrying JoJo after his divorce debacle, spending time with his kids the last year or so while he's been legit injured. But I mean, it makes the guy think about his priorities. Clearly, I hope he ends up somewhere that treats him well or even starts his own wrestling school. But just to say that Mike Rotunda's career seems to be going along the very trajectory that his son Wyndham's career is going along, meaning super fucking crazy over for the first 8 or 9 years, and then ends up getting shuffled off to some place where they put him in a shitty gimmick, IRS, and he still sells the shit out of the fucking gimmick, coming up with his own taglines, doing all this shit. Just to say that, yeah, okay, WCW is the biggest money-making wrestling company on the planet right now, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. They've been around for fucking ever. I get it. But even a gigantic juggernaut like that with a creative team of fucking soap opera writers, that actually does drive me crazy, the soap opera writer thing. Anyways, can't come up with shit for this fucking legitimately talented person to do is akin to what happens back in the 90s in WCW Nitro. You undeniably have some guys that are just garbage, like Alex Wright. And then you've got guys like Hugh Morrus, and you got Megan Barbarian, and you've got these mid-card guys that are actually very, very talented, and you saddle them with a shit gimmick with a goofy booking, and then scratch your head when they aren't getting the reaction you want. Anyways, back to this match. Jarrett comes out and holds down Malenko's foot, but Nick Patrick missed the spot where he was supposed to see it and call off the match. He then stood between Wallstreet and the ropes like a fucking rube. It was a sloppy ass ending to a reasonably well performed match. Post match in ring, there's a Jarrett promo with Gene. He wants a shot at the US belt. Malenko comes back and agrees. All very, very thrilling stuff.
0.0.
Anyways, so Mongo comes out to demand to be in the loop. Jarrett claims that Mongo's ruining his career. Not an unfair observation. Calls Deborah to follow him. She stays in the ring, though, with Mongo while he cuts a promo on Green, again building for their pay-per-view match. After this, Ciclope and Damien defeat the Harlem Heat. Booker T and Stevie Ray gave it 2 out of 5. I'm giggling because of the build is quite excellent. The Heat had some trouble selling the floppy offense of Ciclope and Damien, but managed not to botch their way through it too badly. Booker, of course, was much better at this than Stevie, since Booker is much more flexible than Stevie. Of course, the Steiners come out to interfere here. It gets the Casual DTX replay, and still, this sets up their match at the Bash. While it might have been an old school way of setting up a match, it also, again, happens to work. After the break, it's time once again for the 1-800-COLLECT Road Report from that golden voice bastard, Lee Marshall. This week coming to us from the location of next week's Nitro, Boston, Massachusetts. Did I say that right? I feel like I said it right for once. Heenan apparently sent a custom Wonder Weasel first baseman's mitt to Bill Buckner, and he only made one error with it. Now, I guess that means the infamous one. For those of you, it's funny because in wrestling, because wrestlers are also into other sports and now into video games, they just assume that everyone's into the same things that they're in. And so when they tell a joke that's a little nuanced like this, they assume everyone's going to get it. Now, for those of you that don't understand this joke, I'm going to explain it, and I wish I didn't have to because I'm such a mark for fucking Lee Marshall. The Buckner error in baseball is when a grounder is hit by a lefty and goes right between the first baseman's legs. Now, in Buckner's case, this won the Mets Game 6 of the 1986 World Series and led to a Game 7 where the Mets won the World Series. Now, Heenan was a big baseball fan, and like a lot of baseball fans, we have a few teams that we cheer for. Obviously, one more than others. Wearing my Blue Jays hat here because, of course, I'm Canadian and we're required by law to cheer for them. I'm just kidding. I like the Blue Jays. Now, one of the teams that Heenan was big on was the Red Sox. Now, the Red Sox, of course, at that point were still operating under the assumption that they were under the Babe Ruth curse. And so the Buckner error was deemed to be a curse of the Babe. Now, the thing is that it's a deep dive, like it's a deep cut. And yeah, I mean, sure, maybe some people are into baseball and, you know, to be fair, I didn't have to look this up for once, but the thing is that only really Mets or Red Sox fans would have understood this deep cut. I mean, Heenan obviously understood the deep cut and was grumbly about it, so it got the desired result. The problem is that only other person on the announce team or probably even in the show's production group that understood what the fuck the joke was about was Shivani, and that's because he was a fucking baseball announcer. Anyways, after this, Chris Benoit defeats the Barbarian. I gave this 3 out of 5. I'm not sold that Barbarian didn't accidentally on purpose drop Benoit onto the top rope. Barbarian is a family man. He's got a lot of respect for Sullivan, so it's possible that it was a shoot, but Benoit's knees hitting the top rope wouldn't have been the part that hurt the most, as Tony claimed. It was landing on the back of his fucking head without spreading out the impact with his arms and shoulders that would have done the fucking damage. Now, again, Tony mentions here that the knees are a delicate joint, and that's true. But the head, in retrospect, and at the time, was slightly more delicate. Post-match, there's a promo at ringside with Gene, Benoit, Hart, and I guess Barbarian, who wasn't allowed on camera for the most part because of Gene. Wow, Jesus, the fucking subtle racism.
We coming for you, nigga.
Well, that's an unsubtle racism. Thank you. Jesus Christ. All right. Anyways, so because we really want to see Benoit versus Sullivan, says no one ever, we're going to be having a gauntlet of opponents that Benoit has to go through. So beating Barbarian was, of course, step 1. Step 2 is going to be that at Bash at the Beach, he has to face Meng in a death match. Now, we so badly want to see Benoit versus Sullivan again that I just... No, seriously, we really want to see that match again. I don't know what you're saying over there, but I mean, Sullivan is a master booker, and of course we want to see him and Jackie out there stirring it up with Benoit and Nancy again and just like really having fun with this and just... Okay. Yeah, you're right. No one wants to see that shit. Anyways, now here's the thing. It's no wonder so many of these guys bailed on the WWE. At least in the WWE, the number of people fucking you out of your spot can be counted on one hand. Ric Flair defeats Scott Hall in the main event via disqualification, 4 out of 5 for that one. Hall and Six come out here to entertain the crowd before we dump the break. Back from break, Flair's got his WrestleMania 8 robe on from 1992 as he comes down to the ring. Now, at the top of the show, you may remember that Scott Hall said to dig out a robe from that ancient closet that he has. So he did, from a time when Hall was Razor Ramon. And I think that really could have played more into this, meaning you've already destroyed kayfabe with Hall being Razor Ramon. You've already destroyed kayfabe, letting people know that Flair's back from the WWF. You've already destroyed kayfabe by having Medusa toss the title in the trash. Why not have a fourth wall breaking moment here and point out that Flair is wearing a robe from the company that he no longer works at, or, you know, the New York company or something, like, you know, how Nash does, where he shoots off on the company from the North. Why not do that? It's a subtle dig, granted, but like, you know, WCW's riding high. You can probably get away with it for a while. Anyways, if I had to guess here, there's an excellent bit of back and forth in the classic heel versus face wrestling match. But like I said, if I have to guess, Hall would have wanted this match to prove that he'd learned from the booze rehab and that he's all in wrestling again. And in my opinion, did in this match. He gets himself DQ'd, of course, by using Six's cruiserweight title belt back in kayfabe on the back of Flair's head. Flair gets worked over for a decent amount of time by Hall and Six before Mongo and Jarrett come out for the save. After this, we go to break. Back from break, Tony and Bobby are rambling. To draw out time, I don't know. Fucking recapping everything that happened tonight, that's fine. But Savage, the NWO song comes on, and Savage comes out dragging Gene with him, Liz following him behind. Now, they drag this walk out to the ring to eat up a lot of airtime here as Gene is getting updates on his earpiece. And unfortunately, he keeps touching his earpiece because I think he's being yelled at. Now, we get an in-ring promo from Savage. Gene bails on the segment as Dylan comes out to replace him. This is going very well, by the way. And I'm not even being sarcastic. Now, the fact that Gene is bailing on the segment to be replaced by Dylan means that whoever is holding the mic is getting hit. Which, I mean, we all knew at the time. And we all know in retrospect. But it's still a clever way of making it happen. JJ eats a punch. Bischoff comes out in his WCW gear so that the fans question whether this is a shoot or not. Which was actually really quite brilliant. The funny thing is that this is one of those question mark events in WCW NWO history, and it all depends on who you ask and what kind of mood they're in as to the answer you get. The most popular answer was that this was a work. DDP and Savage got along fine. This feud was going really well with promos, matches, interference, angles. But seeing how much fans were reacting to this, Bischoff wanted to double down. He wanted Smarks specifically to really believe that Savage was crazy, and he certainly was unhinged at the best of times. So it took very little to make Savage look like he was out of his goddamn mind and a wild card, unable to be controlled, non-kayfabe, by the way, by Bischoff. Now, to a certain degree, that was kind of true. Savage hated Hogan, but it was made clear to him that Sting and then DDP would lead the charge against the NWO. So Savage could either play second fiddle to them or to Hogan. He was very outspoken about it too at the time and afterwards. So there was a certain amount of fourth wall breaking aspect to the character of Macho Man and the guy Randy Poffo. Now, ironically enough, this would dog him his entire career, but the fact is that they were doing a really good job of blurring the lines here and really getting Smarks to buy into this Savage gimmick A and then the feud between him and DDP B, because a lot of the stuff that DDP did wasn't necessarily fourth wall breaking, but it would lean into it a little bit, right? Now, some of the more interesting rumors around this feud were a Kim versus Liz match. The initial match was a tandem tag match with the men, but Liz wasn't going for it. Then the suggestion came out that it was going to be a singles match between the ladies. But again, Liz isn't really into fitness, so she wasn't really going to go for that either. She'd get on the treadmill and stuff like that, but she wasn't into lifting as very clearly Kim is. Then someone floated the idea of a bikini contest. Again, this was shot down, but this time shot down by Kim Page. Now, suggestions stopped short of a bra and panties match. However, I'm sure we can all agree if fucking Russo was there, that would have been a suggestion as well. Another suggestion was a cage match between the guys. Now, both Savage and DDP have been in cage matches, and they'd each been injured in the first match, and they'd each been injured in cage matches. Neither of them were keen to add this to the mix. Then, of course, there was the hardcore match suggestion. And again, both guys were not game for this since it could very easily go very, very wrong. Now, at the time, DDP and Kim were still solid, meaning marriage-wise. And DDP was never really a hugely jealous guy like Savage was known to be. Now, DDP has talked about it several times since then, and he was empathetic about Randy and his paranoia, both with his own booking and his women. Now, had Savage stayed in the baseball system, he probably would have been just as paranoid and had just as many problems with Liz at home alone, even if he did end up knocking her up, as he did with having her on the road with him. He was just, listen, you get burned and you just don't trust people in general. Never mind, all that other fun stuff that goes on between couples. Opposite sex, same sex, whatever the fuck. Couples are messy at times. The entire feud is and continues to be a fascinating view into the inner workings of one of the best wrestlers of all time and how the company that he was working for at the time juggled their programming with his paranoia and OCD. Anyways, Nitro itself was very good this week. 3.5 out of 5 is the score. The final few bash matches have now sort of been set up with the exception of the Dragon Psychosis, thank you, match. Now, jeez, I almost made it. Now, these have all been done and set up before the go-home episode of Nitro. And to be honest, the Psychosis and Dragon match is really just going to be a highlight match to get fans into the pay-per-view anyways. So this gives them a whole go-home episode of Nitro to quite literally pour gas on these fires. Now, I know I said it earlier, but it bears repeating again. It is absolutely amazing what can be done by a booking committee when one of them stops trying to put themselves over. Thank you. All right, that's going to be it for this week. Come back next week, same time, same place, you animals. Don't forget to share the show, like the show, all that other jolly horseshit you have to do in the background that makes algorithms pop.
Well, that was an abortion of a show. Should the mood take you, check out markoutradio.com and leave a comment. You can also find links there to our Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Stitcher channels. You can even leave a voicemail on our Skype. Just click the links and share them.